From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
With the governor's race and the political battle for the mayor of Providence casting a wide shadow over the 2014 ballot, few may realize two Republican candidates are seeking to unseat Congressman David Cicilline, but they must first get through a GOP primary. This week on Newsmakers, Republican candidates for Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District, Cormick, Lynch, and Tran. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Ted Nesi is off this week, so joining me on the panel is Eyewitness News analyst Arlene Violet. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Arlene. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Thank you for having us.
So I want to start with a very basic question for both of you, and we'll do it alphabetically. You want to be U.S. Congressman. Why?
Yes, sir. My name's Cormick Lynch. I'm the endorsed Republican candidate for the United States Congress. I was born in Cranston. I grew up in South Kingstown. I'm currently a resident of Newport, Rhode Island. I think anyone with a set of eyes and ears, Tim, can see that the current state of the state and the future direction of the country is unacceptable, and we need a change of leadership at the highest levels of our government. I have experience in the public sector, I have experience in the private sector. Most importantly, I've worn our nation's uniform, and I understand the trials and tribulations of those who do, and I think that needs to be more respected in Washington, and I certainly feel I'm the man for the job.
Same question to you, Tran. Why do you want to be a U.S. Congressman?
Healthcare is too expensive. I have patients who cut their pills in half or don't take their medication because they can't afford to do so. I've tried to address this in my role as a medical student and as a future physician, but I realized that to effectively decrease the cost of pharmaceuticals in this country, I had to step outside that role, which is why I'm sitting here before you're running for Congress. But the effects of healthcare goes far beyond just patients. In this country, we pay the most for healthcare and have the worst outcomes of any country. And every year, the state in this country spends more on healthcare, and the healthcare eats up a huge portion of the federal budget. And that leaves less money to spend on other things we also need, like paving the roads, educating our children. The cost of healthcare is a reason why companies are moving out of this country because the cost of labor is too high.
All right, there are a lot of policy issues that Arlene and I want to tackle here, sort of a litmus test for both of you, because quite frankly, no one knows who you are. But I want to talk about the political reality of you both running in the 1st Congressional District. Cormick, why do you think you're a better candidate than Brendan Doherty, who had a lot of support? He was able to raise a lot of money, but lost to David Cicilline by 12 points in 2012. Why are you better than Brendan Doherty?
I don't think it's a matter of better or worse. I think I'm different. I think the political environment's different. I think Colonel Doherty put up an excellent race, but I think he lost because of his environment. I think President Obama carried Rhode Island more so than any other state, and Congressman Cicilline won on his coattails.
Isn't that your challenge here, though, Cormick?
Absolutely.
62% of this state voted for President Obama.
Right.
You in the 1st Congressional District, even more so.
And it's not a presidential election year, right? And I think I have a diverse background. Listen, Tim, I've worked in a union before. I went to college on the GI Bill. I've worked in the private sector. I've worked in the public sector. I have more in common with the working class, the common man, and the struggles that Rhode Islanders are going through because of this failed representation than anyone on the Republican ticket or anyone on the Democratic ticket. Am I new? Am I playing like a walk-on? Am I wearing my foot soles to earn the trust of Rhode Islanders? Certainly, but I just hope they take an honest look at my candidacy to see the stark difference between myself and the establishment politicians that have done nothing for us.
Stan, why is Congress an entry-level position?
I don't think it's an entry-level position. I'm interested in healthcare, and I want to make healthcare cheaper and more affordable for people. And Congress is a place to do that. You can't, as a state, Rhode Island has no leverage in negotiating with the pharmaceutical industry and changing the laws and rules that allows us to buy cheaper medications. I mean, that takes leadership at the federal level.
But you're focusing on one sole issue. In the first two questions I gave you,
yes,
your answers were both healthcare.
Yes.
And obviously that is the key platform to your campaign. But guess what? A U.S. congressman has to deal with a lot more than just healthcare.
Absolutely.
So what within your resume, beyond being a Brown University medical student who's on hiatus, makes you qualified to be a U.S. congressman?
I was a high school teacher before coming to medical school, so I understand education from the perspective of a teacher. And so there you have education and healthcare, which are two big parts, two big functions of the government in terms of public education and healthcare. Federal government pays for these sorts of things through Medicare and through grants like Race to the Top and No Child Left Behind. It would be very nice for a change to have someone in Congress who understands how healthcare is delivered, how education is delivered, and can speak to that, as opposed to listening to lobbyists and who get what they want.
So here's another issue, immigration. 119 children here in Rhode Island. Deval Patrick, governor of Massachusetts, got criticized for offering a base. Hey, should we open up more space if the government asks us? And more importantly, do you regard the children coming here primarily as refugees, or are they interlopers illegally here, and that there should be no distinctions between where they come from in Central America? Just send them back as fast as possible.
So that's a great question, because my parents are Vietnamese. They're political refugees. They left Vietnam after the fall when the communists took over. And so I think immigrants are great for this country. This country is built on immigrants. But there's a distinction between legal immigrants and illegal immigrants. And the flood of people coming across the border makes it more difficult for people to stay here and to do so legally. For example, in this state, we have Johnson and Wales University, and we have a lot of foreign students who attend that school. They live in this state for 4 years. Some of them have great ideas. They want to stay and pursue business opportunities. And some of those opportunities, some of those ideas might be successful and bring jobs here. But those students, if they apply for a visa, can't get it because of the influx of illegal immigrants. So we need to stop the flow of illegal immigrants to allow people who want to do so legally.
And send them back. Cormick?
Absolutely. I think at its core, to answer your question, we need to repatriate these children back. But we need to take a multi-tiered approach in order to do so. First things first, this often goes overlooked. As Stan mentioned, we do have a strong tradition of immigration. Immigration made this country what it is today. 28% of the businesses started in 2011 were done so by immigrants. 40% of the American Fortune 500 was founded by immigrants or sons and daughters of immigrants. There's a place for immigration here in America, and that will continue in the future. This isn't just an immigration issue. This is now a public health issue and a national security issue. We simply cannot accommodate these children at this juncture of our nation's history.
So both of you on your websites talk about the paralysis in Congress,
Right.
that nothing gets happened. They're all going on vacation the end of this month. They're throwing billions of dollars at this immigration problem. They're throwing billions of dollars at the last minute at the veterans problem, even though in Congress there are oversight committees
Right, exactly,
for both of that.
exactly.
So tell me, how are you going to be any different as you look at your potential colleagues in Congress? Are they disengaged? Are they incompetent? What are you going to be doing any differently?
They're partisan politicians, and Congressman Cicilline is the poster child of it. He votes with his party 96% of the time and spends the majority of the other 4% ostracizing Republicans. He's not a team player. He's not a pragmatic, solution-oriented legislator. He's not providing an effective mechanism of oversight. And what you just listed, President Obama's $3.7 billion plan to throw money at the problem at the border will do nothing to avert the crisis. As a matter of fact, only $25 million of that is allocated to be spent in fiscal year 2014.
So who's to blame for the lack of resolution of these problems years ago, Mr. Tran?
So I think you're right that Congress is paralyzed, and the way out of that is to have practical solutions to solve problems. So for example, with the Obamacare, Republicans have voted, I've lost track, but it's over 50 times to repeal that. And it hasn't gained traction because medical care in this country was a problem before Obamacare, and it's still a problem today. So repealing Obamacare doesn't solve anything. So if you go to my website and take a look at my ideas, I have 5, 6 ideas, practical ideas that can work. For one example is allowing patients to buy drugs from other countries like Canada, where it's half the cost. Now, is that a Republican idea or a Democratic idea? Well, really neither. It just makes sense because there's a monopoly on this country, and that's not fair. And so it's those sort of ideas that we need. We need new people with those sort of ideas to build a consensus between Democrats and Republicans to get something done.
Arlene, can I just say one thing back on immigration? They are going on break at the end of this week, and I would like to publicly call them not to until this is resolved. Congressman Cicilline is a member of the House Committee of the Judiciary, which oversees the subcommittee of Immigration and Border Security. He plays a direct role in resolving this, and he hasn't. The last thing he should be doing is going on a break.
Cormick, you said that that Congressman Cicilline votes with his party 97% of the time.
96, I
okay,
think
so I'm not going to fact check that here, but a lot.
Right.
And that it's partisan politics.
Yeah.
Would you vote for John Boehner as Speaker of the House if you are elected U.S. Congressman?
Would I vote with him or
For
vote
him.
For him. Would you support him to be the Speaker of the
Yes,
U.S. House of
absolutely. I
Representatives?
wouldn't give him a blank check, and I wouldn't rubber stamp everything that comes out of his mouth, but would I support him?
Stan,
Yes.
would you vote for John Boehner as House Speaker?
It depends what my other options are. I don't think he's taking a pragmatic approach to governing this country, and I would like to see someone different.
Okay, so since you both talk about bipartisanship, can you name one position of Nancy Pelosi that you would support?
No.
I'm not really familiar with her positions.
So, Cormick, on your website, you said the number one issue facing Rhode Islanders is jobs and the economy. But besides pointing that out, you didn't put up any solutions at all. You just named the issue.
I think.
So what would be your answer as a congressman now?
Right.
To name the pillar of your platform when it comes to jobs and the economy for Rhode Islanders.
I think it's taxes and the burden on small businesses. And I think small businesses are the driving force of our economy, and we've crushed them. I think we need to allow small businesses and individuals to retain more of their earnings. I think they're being taxed to death. I think native Rhode Islanders are fleeing this state at such a rapid rate that by the time the 2020 census comes out, we'll only be allocated one representative in the House, and we need to start lowering taxes.
Why not run for General Assembly then? Work on income taxes in Rhode Island, work on the
because
corporate
I
tax.
think what Rhode Islanders need is a U.S. congressman in the House majority that can pass legislation for them, and they haven't had that.
Stan, I know your big platform is healthcare, as you've talked a lot about on this
And
show.
also vocational training in
So
regards
talk
to the
about
economy.
that. Now, what would be, again, sort of the same as Cormick here. I didn't see a lot of substance on your website. You
Sure.
just pointed out the problem.
Yes.
So what would be the...
So 2 reasons why we have the highest unemployment rate of any state here and how to fix it. We have a corrupt core of politicians. When you have one party that runs everything, when you have the Attorney General who's the same party as everyone else, there's no check and balances. The second reason is there's a mismatch between the skills that we have here and the needs of the state and of this country. So in high school, we try to get all the kids to go to college, and this has been the push in the last 1-2 decades. That's a push from the teachers, from the guidance counselors. It comes from the top. So programs like Race to the Top and No Child Left Behind, they grade schools based on certain criteria, and if you meet that, you get the federal grants. One of the things, if you look at the Race to the Top grant that Rhode Island applied for, was they're grading themselves based on how many kids they get to college. And that's great if kids graduate, but the fact is most students in this state who go to college drop out in the first year, have debt, can't find a job, and have no backup plan. So we need to admit that that's not working and give these kids an alternative. And that alternative is vocational training in high school. Shop classes have been squeezed out because of this pressure to have remedial math class, remedial English classes, and you have a student in high school who doesn't like math, and they're forced to take math and forced to go to college and learn more math, they don't do well, and that's a problem.
So, but my same question that I had to Cormick when I
Yes.
asked him, why don't you run for the General Assembly if you want to affect taxes in Rhode Island? Why don't you try and get on the Rhode Island Board of Elections if you want to shape the educational system in Rhode Island? How is a U.S. congressman effective in that arena?
Board of Education.
Board of Education, thank you.
It's the federal grants that when you have a large federal grant with hundreds of millions of dollars, and they tell the state, if you get more kids to college, you'll get this money. That's huge amounts of pressure to get states to do what the federal government wants.
So put a gun to the head of the Rhode Island Board of Education and say, if you want this money, this is how I want you. You're going to micromanage
It's to
the
remove that
education
gun.
system.
It's
in
the other
Rhode
way
Island.
around. Right now, the grant says you need to do these things in order to get the money, and I'm advocating to remove that and allow the states to do what's best for them.
But you would still need the state education system to change how they do things based on what you'd like, correct?
working with the state education system. I mean, I think they agree that there's a flaw in this and it's not working. I mean, the vocational training is something that's being accepted and it's being talked about. But the thing I would like to focus on is vocational training in high school. It's because kids in high school aren't being exposed to this, and so they don't pursue these careers. And we still have a need in this country for skilled laborers.
Arlene?
I'd like to, you want to respond?
Yeah,
I think, first of all.
college education has gone up 1,200% since 1978. This isn't your parents' college education. Students, young students, are issuing outrageous amounts of debt to go to college and get a degree, and the only thing the schools are guaranteeing them after that is a bill. So I think
Isn't Congress guaranteeing that bill? The Stafford loans went up 21% in terms of the rate of interest because Congress did nothing about it. But let me switch quickly.
I think one thing we need to, especially if it's injected with federal money, which is part of the reason why the cost is going up so high, education costs should not increase more than the rate of inflation.
Obamacare, two different decisions last week in terms of subsidies, saying that you can't do the federal programs, you only can subsidize through state programs. Knowing those two decisions, if you were in Congress today, would you move to either amend Obamacare to allow the subsidies, or would you say, thank God, I'm going to go with the decision that we're not giving subsidies?
I think we need to amend it to allow it. I wouldn't stop just with that subsidy. I think, unfortunately, Obamacare is here to stay. I think the Supreme Court upheld it. I recognize that. I do think we need to be mindful of the false pretenses it was passed under. I do think we need to be mindful of lines such as, you can keep your doctor if you like him or her, which turned out to be untrue. However, our healthcare system before 2008 in many ways was indefensible. The solution to that is not a federal hijacking of the healthcare system. You can look no further than the VA to see that that's not a practical solution, but we do need to reform it into something affordable.
Mr. Tran.
I would be in favor for it.
Okay, I think we're going to take a break here on Newsmakers. Our guests this week, we have Stan Tran and Cormick Lynch. They are both Republican candidates running for Congress in Rhode Island's 1st District. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right is Eyewitness News analyst Arlene Violet. Our guests this week, Stan Tran and Cormick Lynch. They're both Republican candidates running for the 1st Congressional District here in Rhode Island. Gentlemen, we're trying to cover a lot of ground, sort of litmus test stuff here, so I want to do a bit of a rapid fire section here. I'm looking for just one-word answers from both of you, and we'll start left to right here. Cormick, are you pro-choice or pro-life?
Pro-life.
Pro-choice.
Do you support Stan? Do you support Rhode Island's voter ID laws? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Cormick, letter grade for House Speaker John Boehner.
B.
Stan?
D.
And with you, letter grade for Congressman David Cicilline.
No, it's not passing. It's an F.
F.
Okay, and finally, Cormick, yes or no? Would you support a law as Congressman? Would you vote for a law that would legalize marijuana federally?
Not right now.
And Stan?
Legalize and regulate.
Okay, Arlene.
Wednesday, CNN reported that Israel has asked the United States for more ammunition to continue its fight with the Hamas. Would you support giving that ammunition?
We've done a lot for Israel. We can't secure our own border right now, Arlene, so not right now.
I support what Israel is doing in terms of fighting Hamas. At this juncture, in the past, other Arab countries, has been outspoken against what Israel has done. But this time, they've surprisingly stayed silent because they realize that Hamas is a terrorist organization. I mean, they're firing missiles at civilians, and that's not acceptable under any circumstances.
Stan, in your website, you talk about the fact that in Syria, that red line has been ignored.
You mean Cormick?
Cormick, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That red line has been stepped over.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Afghanistan, for largely 13 of those years we've been there, have been mismanaged. Could you be specific as to why you've made those comments on your website? And in general, for both you gentlemen, to what degree do you agree or disagree with President Obama's military strategy, which basically is keep boots off the ground, sometimes give supplies, consultants, but that's it?
Yeah, keep boots off the ground, sometimes give supplies, consultants, and do something other than win. Arlene. I disagree with it wholeheartedly.
Okay, and what about what did you mean about the red line being crossed?
I
What would
mean-
you have done and what
I mean,
should have happened in Afghanistan?
if you're going to tell the Assad regime using chemical weapons is a red line that won't be tolerated, be prepared to have the backbone to stand firm. Because the Assad regime used chemical weapons and we did nothing about it. Behavior like that, projecting weakness abroad, is emboldening our adversaries and confusing our allies. If you don't think Vladimir Putin was watching and calculating while that was happening, and if you don't think that's reason for his current behavior, you're wrong.
What should we have done
is.
then with Assad?
Either stay out of it or allow military advisors, put boots on the ground to help protect the civilians, use drones to gain intelligence. Don't draw a red line because you box yourself into a corner if you're not prepared to defend it.
What about Obama's policy, military strategy?
The first step to solving these issues is having diplomacy, and the second step is military strength. The ambassadorship right now is set up as a patronage system where people who donate lots of money or fundraise money for Obama gets a position, and that's wrong. And that's the reason why, one of the reasons why American is not well respected in the world, because we don't understand, or we send incompetent ambassadors abroad. So that needs to change. We need to make ambassadorship something that's appointed based on merit and not based on patronage. In terms of military, peace comes from strength. So if we have a stronger military, that's going to help us deter countries like Syria.
But do you support no boots on the ground, which
Yes.
is his basic underpinning?
Yeah.
I support no boots on the ground, Arlene, but I want to be crystal clear about something. Our military needs to be fortified and well cared for at home, and it's not. There's a way to eliminate inefficiencies in our Department of Defense, okay? We're in 167 countries, and we can't accomplish the mission because the leadership at the highest levels of our government is deplorable. The men and women who wear our nation's uniform are the most anyone could ever ask for. However, we can't secure our own border, even, Arlene. So I think we need to bring a lot of the military help.
Stan, you have a background in education.
Right.
How do you feel about school choice or vouchers in public schools?
I want public schools to be good for everybody. And I realize that politically that's difficult to change the whole system all at once. And so in the absence of that, I would be for experimenting with new ideas, trying new ideas in one or two schools, showing that works, and then applying that to the bigger system.
But I don't understand what that means as far as school choice or vouchers. Do you
Right.
support that or no?
Yes, I
And
do.
What about the concern, the pushback on that is it draws money out of the already tapped public schools?
I don't think that's the case because children are being funded based per capita. Like if you educate each children to get $4,000 or $6,000 a year. And so these schools are doing it differently, and they're doing it cheaper, they're doing it better. So for example, sports is something that takes up a lot of money from schools in terms of busing kids to sport and running these sports things. And a lot of these charter schools do away with that, and that frees up more money for them to do other things in terms of education.
How were you on vouchers, school choice?
Yeah, I'm absolutely for it. I think the more competition, the better. I think we need to make decisions with the student as the nucleus of our decision calculus. I think parents are the first and best educators of their children, and we need to be mindful of that, but I would be for
Are
it.
either of you, Cormick, with you, do you consider yourself a Tea Party Republican?
No.
And Stan? I didn't think so. Are you seeking their support?
I think we want to find common ground on issues we can resolve for the country, and if we can do that with
Yeah, but you're looking for the endorsement of the Rhode Island Tea Party.
no, I'm not
I
active.
understand.
No, but I've spoken to them and they've been agreeable.
So do you think they've been good or bad? Start with you, Stan. Good or bad for the Republican Party nationally?
Bad.
They've fractured it. I think they have a lot of good ideas, but it's driving a lot of internal fracturing.
Local leadership issue, constitutional convention, would you support it or no?
For the state, yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
The last time I checked on the Elections Commission website, and the last filing was June 30th, both of you had less than $10,000 in your campaign account. How's that looking now?
Better.
What does better mean?
Double.
So, and Stan?
I have like 13,000, so over 10, which is not much in the bigger scheme of things.
Certainly, and a lot of people are going to look at that and say, how can we take these guys seriously? If they look, whether you agree or disagree with, whether you agree or disagree with the fundraising system in the United States is sort of moot. It's the ball field that you're playing in right now. So a lot of people are going to look at that and go, geez, how can we take these guys seriously?
Well, I think we need to gain their trust and have them tune in on shows such as this and see that we're reliable, strong candidates. I think fundraising is a challenge. It's not going to be any easier in 2016, and you need to start somewhere.
Always a good play to butter up the Newsmakers crowd, Cormick, by the way. Steve, how about you, though? I mean, seriously,
Yeah. So
you're not going to. It's going to be difficult to
Right.
win, I should say, with,
Yes.
with less than $20,000 in the bank account.
So here's the conventional ideology. You raise at least $500,000 to be a serious candidate. The first thing you do when you're running is to run a poll and to see what people want to hear. And then you feed that to them because that wins votes. I disagree with that approach completely. There are certain issues that are important for us to talk about that will never poll well. Issues like end-of-life care. Who wants to talk about death and dying? But that's an important issue because you spend so much money on those last 3 months of life, and patients don't die the way they want to. And so I want to bring attention and talk about these issues, and it doesn't cost money to do that.
All right, we have about 30 seconds left in the show. Walking into the studio, there was some breaking news out of Wisconsin that the Supreme Court there upheld a law that ended collective bargaining for most public workers. So I'm going to ask you guys up or down here again. We have very little time. Should Rhode Island be a right-to-work state, Cormick?
Yes.
Do you think that would be difficult to get elected with such a strong labor corps here in Rhode Island when you have that sort of platform?
No, I think there's a position for organized labor. I don't think they should take control of their rank and file union, but I think there's a place for them to negotiate with management.
10
I
seconds,
recognize
yes
that.
or no on right-to-work state for Rhode Island?
I think unions should have the right to organize. That's a human right, but they shouldn't have the right to force workers to join their unions.
Stan Tran, Cormick Lynch, thank you very much for joining us
Thanks
on
a lot,
Newsmakers.
Tim.
For
Thank you,
Arlene
Arlene.
Violet, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers. Good job, guys.
Thanks a lot.